Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Get ready for Talking Heads, the show where expert insights meet world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Brought to you by USA Global TV and Radio. Meet our distinguished presenters. From the great state of Texas, longevity expert, award-winning author, publisher, and distinguished Toastmaster, Red O'Loughlin. From London, England, soul heart awakener, novelist, vocal coach, and artist, Dr. Madeline Chan. Also from England, the Harley Street stress expert, therapist, ambassador for peace, and speaker, Carolyn Heward. And from Australia, ICF PCC credentialed coach, entrepreneur, and leadership coach, Mariska Dupria. Experience their expertise, connect with their wisdom, and transform your perspective. Watch Talking Heads on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. This video and its contents are the property of USA Global TV and Radio. All rights reserved. Terms and conditions apply. Visit usaglobaltv.com for more details.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Our show today is A Woman's Prerogative Part 2. I'm Caroline Heward and I'm known as the Harley Street Stress Expert. I'm absolutely thrilled and honoured to be representing Dr. Jacqueline as your host for USA Global TV and Radio's flagship show, A Woman's Prerogative. I'm a TV presenter for USA Global TV and Radio and the resident therapist for USA Global TV and Radio. A warm welcome to our loyal viewers and our friends over on all our social media channels. Our usual social media is YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. Today's topic is a really, really interesting one, something to warm up your cockles. It's Cold Weather Comforts, Traditional Dishes That Warm the Soul, Part 2. We had a really interesting and fun and diverse exploration in A Woman's Prerogative Part 1 on this topic. And I'm really looking forward to this exploration with our full-time panelist, Mariska Dupria. She is an optimist and an ICF PCC credentialed coach. She is a coach extraordinaire. I look forward to having this amazing conversation about winter comfort food. Please bring out Mariska Dupria.
Hello, Caroline. And as we mentioned before the show, this is definitely going to be an interesting exploration, especially seeing as I'm having summer. So who knows what will come up.
Absolutely. And just before the show, in the background, backstage, we were making reference to the fact that that Mariska's in much warmer temperatures, and I was talking about the sub-zero temperatures that I'm living in the UK. So we jested a little, but this is something that is relevant for even Australia, because you do have cold weather. It's just not quite now. So please, Mariska, do share with our viewers, especially if they're here for the first time, a little bit about what you do and how you help people.
So I am, as Caroline mentioned, a qualified PCC coach, and I help leaders. So whether you are a leader that moved from a specialization into leadership, or you are moving up within your leadership space, That is where I come in, because we need to bring a bit more humanness into that space. As pressures of work can sometimes, well, make us all a little bit too robotic for some odd reason, and think of people more as chess pieces than humans. And that is not necessarily how we get the best out of them. So if you are a leader and you would like to get in contact, you can do so via my email, which is mariska@journey2, the number 2, discover.com. Or alternatively, you can also find me on LinkedIn and we can connect there. And for some odd reason on LinkedIn, I'm Mariska D. I don't know what they did with the rest of my surname, but that is where you would find me. How about you, Caroline?
Thank you, Mariska. I love the journey too. The number 2 always makes me smile. Well, I'm known as the Harley Street stress expert, as I mentioned earlier in my introduction, and I help people bust their stress. I work with root cause therapy and chakra psychology to identify the root cause of the repeating patterns of what creates your repeating patterns of stress, whether it be physical, emotional, mental, or behavioral. And I'm looking at your blueprint, what's causing the problem originally, and clearing the blueprint in the body so that you don't repeat the pattern of the way that the stress creates. So you might be somebody that says, oh, I don't have stress, but then you're complaining that you don't sleep, or you have a consistent migraine, or you have you're complaining about a colleague or a relationship. That is how your stress is manifesting. And I work with you to identify in a really simple process your repeating patterns and the root cause, so that it clears everything, so you don't keep repeating the pattern of the way that your stress manifests in your life. I also do lunch and learn training, speaking opportunities for companies where it's an educational slot in terms of educating teams online or face-to-face. And that's going really well. And that's something that I've introduced in the latter part of last year. And I'm going to take that forward this year. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on LinkedIn and also Facebook. My details, I think, right, they're just there coming up. Thank you very much, Heather, in the background doing the whizzy works. You can follow me there and also message me on those 2 platforms. And I now am going to dive into our wonderful topic today. Cold weather comforts, traditional dishes that warm the soul, part 2. But before we get really into it, I wanted to share with you that Canadians, so our full-time panelist is Canadian on part 1, we found a lot of similarities with the British and the Canadians. And we talked about different times of the day and when we ate. And one of the things that I shared was that I'm not a big breakfast person, and she was very much a big breakfast person. In light of that, the things that we were sharing, even though they were quite similar, we're actually quite different in different ways. So, Mariska, what is your favorite weather dish? And why does it hold a special place for you in terms of whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner? So what's your favorite heartwarming weather dish?
Oh, Caroline. Yeah, I think I might have had to get my husband in for this show today. He has a whole list. My favorite weather dish, when thinking about cold weather, I love soup. Now, I can do soup in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening. I do not care. I really, really enjoy a hearty soup. So for me, a hearty soup has loads of vegetables in it. Not necessarily potato, may or may not have potato in it. Definitely meat. Now, I am not opposed to eating meat. So I like meat in my soup and I like vegetables in my soup. And depending on what I feel like, there may or may not be cream in it. But yeah, I would say I would go for a good soup, would definitely work for me. And the fun thing about soups is you can literally have such a big variety. They store really well. So if you don't have time to make them regularly, you can do them once a week and you can eat them throughout. So I'm a fan. What can I say? How about you, Caroline?
Oh, I love it. I was feeling very warmed by your soup descriptions. I'm not a big meat eater, and I also am a lover of soup. And I'm a little bit the other end in terms of I like things like sweet potato soup and things like mushroom, cream of mushroom, and broccoli and Stilton soup, and so that they're a little bit more vegetable-y and a little bit more lighter. And it's tomato soup as well. I quite like plant-based tomato soup. For me, as opposed to the fact that you can have soup anytime, for me, soup is either at lunchtime or in the evening, because it's for breakfast. I'm not very good in the mornings, and so if I'm lucky, I'll have a banana. And then by the time I get to lunchtime, I really want something warming. And I certainly had some soup this afternoon because it's very chilly here, sub-zero temperatures, and it really warmed me up. So I'm a little bit same and opposite in terms of a tasty soup being more vegetable based, but that's really by choice because I'm not a big meat eater. But my favorite dish in terms of warming myself is a vegetable soup. So we're pretty similar in terms of the fact that we will turn to a soup. So Mariska, are you surprised at how similar we are? The simplest and yet similar.
Caroline, typically we have discovered that we have a tendency to think the same way about things. What can we say? Great minds and all that.
Absolutely. So in thinking about traditions and thinking about winter, how it differs across cultures, because we're now looking at two very different cultures, the Australians and the British, and we have very different climates. So just thinking about the unique dishes from your background that represent warmth and comfort, can you think about any dishes that would be Australian based or from where you were brought up in terms of what's specific and different from the culture that you were brought up in?
So, Caroline, let's see. First off, being from South Africa originally, we've had soups. Now, I think in all cultures you have soups of some shape or form. Then we also had a broth, which I think you still have in the UK, as far as I'm aware.
We do,
because we do have some English influence within the South African space, as well as, mind you, the Australian space. You guys did end up coming this way. And we also have a now I cannot remember what the English is for it. It's called bori in Afrikaans. So not sure what that is in English. It is a meat dish with vegetables in it, and then you have rice you mix with it, and it has raisins in it, interestingly enough, for a bit of a sweetness. And then there is some turmeric and paprika. So there's a whole bunch of nice warm spices in it that I remember vividly from my days in SA. And we eat it in winter as well as summer, depending. In winter, it would be a dish, and in summer, it might be a side dish to other things. So we have that as well. And then one of the odd, I don't know why, and I don't know whether you guys do this, for some odd reason, one of the things that comes up for me is milk food. Now, in Afrikaans, it's melkos. In English, the direct translation is milk food. Yes, it sounds very weird. It is a dish made primarily of milk. Typically, almost the same way you would make a custard, but not quite, and it doesn't go yellow. In South Africa, there's a whole bunch of different things that you would add to it. There would definitely be some form of cinnamony amounts in it, and it will have some butter in it. It's really, really rich. It's really, really yummy. I love it to bits. And it is a sweet dish. So it's not a savory dish. It's a sweet dish. You can eat it as a dish, or you can just eat it as a dessert. Either way, works well.
Oh, I say, my lips are watering. When you were describing it, because in our part one of the show, we didn't talk about desserts, interestingly enough. And the British, as British, we have a lot of really, really stodgy desserts. And what you've just described sounds a little bit like our bread and butter pudding. We make it with old bread, and it's butter, and it's sultanas, and then there's a bit of cinnamon, and it's sort of it is yellow because it kind of creates a milk and eggs. It's like a custard thing, but that's something that we would have as a warming dessert, sort of, and we would call it pudding rather than dessert. And we have a whole range in the British tradition of puddings to warm you. And I'm just thinking about some of the ones now that I still like, the very old-fashioned ones. So bread and butter pudding, spotted dick is another one, which is
has a suggestive name.
Well, the spotted dick is essentially a sponge with raisins in it, or currants. And then you would have custard with it. So it's a very warming pudding. And sticky toffee pudding is another one that I'm still partial to. And these are all traditional puddings that warm. They're very heartwarming. And crumbles is another one that we would have, apple crumble or rhubarb crumble, especially. That was a very old-fashioned one. That rhubarb crumble. Rhubarb was very inexpensive when I was growing up as a child, and we would have rhubarb crumble quite regularly because it was just so warming and filling as well. So yes, we didn't talk about desserts, but we have so many in England. And the other ones that I'm thinking of are the milk puddings. So my mum would do a milk pudding that was a rice pudding, which would have like a big skin on the top. And that was something that we had in the winter to warm us. And then they would do things like tapioca, which was like little, I don't know, I never liked it. I used to say it was just like little horrible things in the middle of this milk thing. I never liked it. But these are very old traditional English desserts, puddings. We would call those kinds of desserts puddings. And always with custard, the crumbles and apple pie with custard. And because the custard was very yellow, it would be very warming. And, at school, we would have these huge jugs of custard, that we would pour onto whatever we had as a pudding. So what other kinds of puddings would you have?
As you were mentioning the ones that you have, there's similar ones, or most probably abbreviations of the ones that you mentioned, Caroline. And then one other one that I'm a fan of and I cannot make. And I have no idea what it is called in English. It is sauce cloakies. So if I were to translate this directly, it would be sauce. I don't even know what a cloakie would be in English. It's basically a small little baked ball of dough that you bake in water, and then you take it out and you put butter and cinnamon and stuff over it. So it's almost like you guys do a similar thing, but you put it in meat. It's not a dumpling. It is, the words are escaping me today. Oh, man. No, I can't remember what it's called. In any case, I really like it. I cannot make them. They always turn very, very flat if I make them for some odd reason. My mom's an expert, so typically on my birthday or such sort of occasions, I get some of those, which I get very excited about. And I'm normally almost the only one that love them. And as you mentioned, the rhubarb pudding, that's one of my dad's favorites. And I remember as a kid, the rhubarb, for some odd reason, for me, I'm not a fan of the rhubarb itself. So I used to only eat the crust. I like where the rhubarb touched the crust. That's very good. But I don't like the rhubarb. So I would just scoop off the crust and my dad would scoop the rhubarb afterwards. So yes, that was a fun memory. Thank you for reminding me of that too.
You know, I'm just as I was hearing that, I was very much similar. You know, I would sort of do exactly that, just have the bit that was just under the crumble, because that was my favorite. My favorite really in the crumbles was apple crumble. And as a child, we would we called it scrumping, and we had lots of apple trees that were in different gardens, and I almost feel they were growing wild, and we would as kids go, and we called it scrumping for apples and berries, and blueberry, blackberries and strawberries, and they would grow wild, and we would go, and then my mum would make an apple crumble or a blackberry crumble, and it was just really, it was good fun. And we, my mum would actually work with what we managed to find as children, but that was just something, that was an activity that we did. And just thinking about that, and it was something that came up in the part one of this show, is that why do you think that thinking about foods that warm us and thinking about this topic of winter warmers and thinking about the comfort food, because there is a comfort in it, that it's naturally taking us to our childhood? Do you find that? I find that absolutely fascinating, that it's almost like it's taking us back into our childhood without even asking the question. It's making us consider and remember and smile about those childhood memories of when we were having those foods, those desserts. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, Caroline, I suspect it has something to do with comfort. It was comforting, and most people have some memory of being comforted at some point, and I don't know, food has a relationship to that in some way, shape, or form. Some of us might have different relationships to food, and for most of us, there is something that we attach to a food, a smell, a taste, a place that we been together with others. And for me, one of the things, as you were mentioning, the memories of childhood, is also the memory of being with. So typically, especially during winter times, because it is a little bit cold and miserable outside, we are all cooped up indoors, right? So that's one of the times when we as a family typically would spend more time together, because where else will you be? You're going to be indoors in any case, so you can just as well spend time with the people that's indoors with you. Except, of course, when we are teenagers, for some odd reasons, we just spend time in our room or with our friends. So I don't know whether teenagers still do that. Maybe they do.
They do. They're in their screens.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that it reminded me, and it's something I didn't share in part one, is that I trained and qualified as a master baker and pastry chef and confectioner. And when I left school, I was making a lot of these desserts the professional way. And so every week I would come, I would take a basket of ingredients, and I would come back with, sort of different things that I'd cooked. And I remember there was a family favorite of the pineapple upside down pudding. I don't know whether you've ever heard of it, Mariska, but the upside down pudding, essentially, that the pineapple rings with cherries, and then the sponge was put on top, and then it would bake in the oven, and we would turn it over, and the pineapple was on the top, and we would glaze it, and it was called an upside down cake, the pineapple upside down cake. And you would have that with custard, and that was a really big favorite with my brothers. And I'd left school by then, but it was just something that was, I suppose, a bit more grown up, and at the same time still, with the custard. And in doing that study, it made me very aware of all the different desserts, puddings and foods from other countries and other cultures. And what it did was it made me more interested in what other cultures would eat in terms of pastries. And I became quite a pastry person, the Danish pastries. I would prefer that to the cream, because that was where I was going with it. And that's not warming you, but at the same time, there was lots of different foods and desserts that I experienced. And one of them was a Christmas bread. It was a German Christmas bread called Stollen. And this stollen was a fruited bread dough, sort of a sweet fruited bread dough with all sorts of very heavy fruits. And in the middle of it, there was the white marzipan. And that was also very warming and very Christmassy. So around Christmas time, I know for you, especially now living in Australia, it's very warm. So maybe these don't resonate with you. But at Christmas time, we have what we would call a feast, and that would be, in the middle of the day rather than at the end of the day, so around lunchtime. And turkey is a very big British tradition. And so we would have for Christmas, and we've only just come through Christmas, a huge turkey cooked, it was basted with all sorts of, all night. My mum used to cook the turkey because she'd buy a huge one for the family. And this brought the family together. And it was a huge traditional thing that we would have turkey at Christmas and at Easter. Do you have anything like that from your cultures in terms of where you're living now in Australia, or from when you were growing up as a child in South Africa?
Well, for Christmases, for me, typically we have summer. So barbecue would be in order. We do, from time to time, depending on the family and the traditions, also do other things. And speaking about turkeys, I do remember the one time we had a turkey, chicken, and a duck all sort of squished together. It was really yum.
Woo-hoo.
It also took us quite a while to finish it. But it was really, really good. And we did that during one of the Christmases. Of course, we didn't have as many other warm sort of foods with it. We would do more salads and lighter foods with the turkey. So, yes, I do remember that. And as you were mentioning all these yummy things for winter foods, one of the things that's coming up for me is and this is a hypothesis, you will need to let me know, but it sounds like a lot of the food has some form of sweetness to it, especially during the Christmassy period, some cinnamons and nutmegs and stuff like that. And I recall being with my, way back when, boyfriend that was also German. And in their house, his mom baked a whole bunch of little cookies that they used during Christmas. And it was just all over the place, there would be a plate with these little cookies on them. And you can snack on them the whole day. And they were typically more what I would refer to as winter flavored. So there's a lot more warm spiciness to them. And I recall that specifically in their house, something that they did over Christmas. So I think not only do we have our cultural or the environment in which we live, we also have our family traditions for whatever period that it is that we go through. And this may or may not include warm dishes during winter or cooler ones during summer.
That's just so fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that with our viewers on the show. And it reminded me of the fact that we do have family traditions. And it reminded me of something that my mum used to do when we were children, and my dad used to cook. We called it toad in the hole. And essentially, it was sausages in a Yorkshire pudding batter. And the sausage was the sort of the surprise that it was in that Yorkshire batter. And it was just something that was so warming and filling and enjoyable that when you were describing that, it made me think about the what I've just described. And I haven't thought about that particular dish for a long time. But it was toad in the hole was something that was a firm family favourite. I don't know culturally how big it is, but it was quite a traditional dish way back then to have toad in the hole. But, you know, sort of for the British culture, very much were steeped in things like fish and chips and mushy peas as a big staple of, you know, having a, you know, sort of Fridays would be our fish supper, and we would have fish and chips as a Friday fish supper. So do you have any of those kinds of traditions either from your childhood in South Africa or within Australia?
As you're mentioning the fish and chips thing, I remember that when we had the kids in the house, we tried to expose them to different types of meals. And as a rule, neither one of them were big fans of fish. And fish is still healthy. We get a whole bunch of different vitamins and oils and stuff from our fishes. So I decided to make a Thursday a fish day. And this might be fish and chips. This might be fish in a salad. This might be a salady fish. Whatever it was, it will have fish in it. So we had a fishy Thursday, which I do remember having. And then one of the other dishes that we typically have in South Africa, I'm not sure whether there is a lot of other countries that do it, is we have maize meal, which we call pap. And what we do with that is you can make it in a whole bunch of different ways. So you can have it very crumbly. It's not my favorite. My brother-in-law does enjoy it that way, though. Or you can make a very loose, runny sort of one, or you can make one that's very stiff. And you can eat it in a whole bunch of different ways. So you can have it with butter and sugar and milk, if you want, for a breakfast. Or you can eat it with a gravy of some sort and your meats types of dishes. Or you can even, and I love this, make a dish with it all by itself. So you would make your porridge, which doesn't quite sound like it's a savory dish when I say porridge, but the pap, you would use that. You would put a base, then you would do a capsicum and mushroom mix. You can add meat to that if you want, so a bacon type of thing. You put a layer of that, then you put another layer of your porridge, you put another layer of that, and cheese as well in between, cheese on the top, pop it in the oven. It's like a potato bake, but it is basically with maize meal. It is so good. It is so good. And I hope that my husband does not ever listen to this episode because I will be making food till it comes out my ears. So yes, I'm hoping everybody is hungry by now.
I'm starting to feel hungry and I'm ready for dinner. When you were describing that, Mariska, it made me think, and I forgot about sharing this in the first show. When we were young, my mum and dad would make shepherd's pie and cottage pie. And it took me a long, long time to work out what the difference was. And shepherd's pie is like a mincemeat with potato on, and cottage pie is the same. And I thought they just looked like the same, and I could never work out what the difference was. And this is the way that I learned, and it was very much in my adulthood and only in recent years, that shepherd's pie is made with lamb, hence shepherds, and the cottage pie is made with beef mince. And I preferred shepherd's pie versus cottage pie. So I always preferred lamb when I was younger, and I didn't know what the difference was then. It was very much the mince in a big pot, in a big dish, with mashed potato on, baked in the oven. And it would be really delicious, very warming with vegetables, very, very hearty. But the thing that I'm hearing from both of us, the sharing here, is that these are very hearty and very comforting. And I wonder whether, and we are coming to the end of our show, can you believe it's gone very quickly, hasn't it? And I am feeling ready for my dinner tonight, which is none of the things that we've been talking about. That the heartiness and the comfort, my feeling is it related to our emotions? What are your thoughts on the fact that it's comforting for the winter, bringing us warmth and comfort and feeding the soul almost? Because that's what we've been sharing. We've been smiling and talking about our memories and being really, really soulful in terms of what we've shared, reminiscing back to our childhood. Does this... I feel it brings up a stirring of emotions from our childhood and an association of eating that particular food and how we feel. What are your thoughts on that, Mariska? And do you have anything to add? And has it brought up something in you that you hadn't thought about?
Caroline, I do think that it has emotional attachments, definitely. And thinking about food, I mean, our body, technically speaking, is the bigger brain, so to speak, because it brings in all these different experiences and different ways of sensing and being. And of course, food will have an influence on it. It is not only the way we sustain ourselves physically, making sure we have enough energy. If we only eat to have the amount of energy that we need, and it tasted like cardboard, would you do it? Would you continue to do it? I don't know. I won't. It needs to at least have some extra layers to it. There needs to be a taste. I love the way that the French look at food in the sense of they don't do big dishes. They typically have very small ones. And they really appreciate everything that is in that small little piece. So I think if we do our eating, when we do our eating mindfully and really experience the whole bite in all its flavors and vibrancy, we might have a different experience with food. And Caroline, that's part of what we brought in, I think, today, is that experiences of food. And there's a reason our favorite dish is our favorite dish. So it can make you wonder, why exactly did I choose that one as my favorite?
What's really interesting is that it's a beautiful note to end on. The fact that it brings up all sorts of sensory experiences of of who we are and what comforts us. And, you know, our topic was cold weather comforts, traditional dishes that warm the soul. This is part 2. And I reached down to get the topic so I could actually say it, so that I could remember exactly what it was. And we really have touched on a lot of comfort and warming the soul in this particular show. And I couldn't remember the exact words of the topic. So I reached down to get it to say, you know, well, yes, we really have covered it. And I'm very pleased with the way that we've covered it, because it really has warmed the soul. Thank you very much, Mariska, for an extraordinary and a wonderful exploration. Please do, because we are right at the back end of our show now, please do share with our viewers how they can reach you and the best way to contact you.
So if you are a leader, either stepping into leadership or stepping up in your leadership space, you can contact me via email, which is mariska@journey2discover.com, or alternatively, reach out via LinkedIn, Mariska D. You will find me there with a picture and the scarf, actually. And I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you, Mariska. Always an amazing show. And for me, you can reach me on No More Stress at live.co.uk, or reach out and call if you're international, +44. If you're local, 07523 120 189. Or follow me on my social media profiles, LinkedIn and Facebook. Drop me a message there and I will respond. Please do feel free to allow me to help you bust your stress. There's no reason that you should suffer in silence. It's been an amazing show. I've really enjoyed the show tonight. I've enjoyed the exploration and learning a lot about how the South Africans have tasty food. I wished I'd have been born in South Africa for the tasty foods. It's been fun. I look forward to seeing you all next week on Monday. Mondays is our day for A Woman's Prerogative. For this show, part 2 of Woman's Prerogative is 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. And for A Woman's Prerogative part 1, it's 2 p.m. Eastern Time and 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. And I look forward to seeing you then. Just before we go, please do join our exclusive community and become an exclusive VIP community member. You'll have first access to our newest videos, photographs and insights on the British royal family, live streamed on YouTube and USA Global TV and Radio. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining us. We've had a blast. I hope that you have been inspired to cook warm and hearty meals for the soul. Bye-bye for now.
In a world full of noise, misunderstandings, and interruptions, master the art of listening with Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck is the listening mentor of USA Global TV and Radio and the Amazon #1 best-selling author of Mastering the Power of Elevated Listening. Elevate your listening. Elevate your life. Join a global learning experience in person or via Zoom. Reserve your spot today. usaglobaltv.com/book-your-session or drjacqueline.thinkific.com. Join Dr. Kerbeck's listening courses or hire her to unlock deeper connections and authentic conversations. Have you ever felt unheard? Like your words float into a void, leaving you invisible and disconnected? How about feeling judged, when assumptions overshadow your truth, leaving you misunderstood and defensive? And then there's that moment when someone offers solutions you never asked for, dismissing your feelings and leaving you more frustrated than before. It doesn't have to be this way. Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the listening mentor, understands. She's here to help you reclaim your voice, build stronger connections, and create meaningful conversations that inspire understanding and mutual respect. Through her groundbreaking books, online and in-person courses, and interactive workshops, you'll learn how to navigate life's most challenging interactions. Discover the power of elevated listening and transform how you communicate. Master setting boundaries and asking permission to protect your peace. Learn to recognize and release judgment, fostering empathy and true connection. Dr. Kerbeck also offers personalized coaching, one-on-one or group sessions designed to fit your unique needs. Whether in person or virtually on StreamYard, her guidance will empower you to thrive. You don't have to struggle alone. The path to deeper connections and better relationships start here. Visit drjacqueline.com or usaglobaltv.com. Join a global community of empowered listeners and transform your life, one meaningful conversation at a time. Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck is the listening mentor. Start your journey today.